Today's episode, we take a look at women and finance, the gap that exists in the financial awareness of women and men, and what we can do to change that narrative and improve the financial awareness now and for generations to come. We have with us today a returning guest, Amrita Sethi. Amrita is an award-winning artist with a passion for, for finance, and we're pleased to have her with us today. Today, it is her financial planner hat that we've asked her to wear and share her views and experiences. Amrita, thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you so much, Ansama, for having us.
All right. Women in finance is a topic that is loaded with emotion. There are a lot of women, both working professionals as well as homemakers, that don't really get involved in the financial side of things, whether it is by choice or by the way society has traditionally seen these roles play out. Why do you think that is, and what are the ways to change that mindset?
Oh, wow. It's a great question, and one that, I've been in finance for the last sort of 15 years, and it's always something that pops up. So I'm so glad that we're kind of having this discussion today. So thank you so much for having me on that level. In terms of, where is it? I think, like all people, like men and women, I would say, we all have a current money mindset that we have, whether we are conscious of it or not. And it's the idea is like, what feelings come up? If you close your eyes, you take a couple of deep breaths, and you kind of just get centered, and you start to think about money. What comes up for you? And a lot of the time, that might be a feeling of, might give you a feeling of freedom. It might give you a freedom of fear, of abundance, of scarcity. So first of all, you just have to kind of really connect with how you feel about money and how we've actually created this kind of money mindset. Our current money mindset is from not just our own life experience. So that's years and years of our own experience, whether we've seen, our parents, our grandparents, our wider family, depending on what country you've been brought up on. But also it extends even beyond your own life. It comes from, generations and generations of, do you come from an entrepreneurial family? Do you come from a corporate family? So all of these things have led you to this moment in time where you now have your money mindset. Yeah. And I think where sometimes that happens is that, for everybody it's unique and different. Correct. But I do think that for women as a whole, they have also this new element of being female that also adds to their money mindset, and also for men as well. Yeah. Maybe as you come from a family of males and an entrepreneur family, maybe then there's a money mindset or expectation that you've got to make as much money as maybe the previous generations. So even men have, have that kind of, I would say, have some kind of loading that a woman doesn't have. Sure. But a lot of women also have this, this kind of, I said, this extra layer of, traditionally not always having a seat at the table. Yep. So, we see that that's changed drastically over the years, but again, depending on what culture you come from, what family you come from, all of these factors, this layer still might be thicker still from a female perspective. So what I always say is identify what your money mindset is today. And then think about, well, how do you want to feel about money? How do you want to feel about finances? And typically something like, vision boarding, which is really good, is just trying to say to yourself, is take again that quiet moment and think about, what do I want my future to look like? Like, forget even future, just how do I want to feel about money? Yeah. It could just be like, today I feel as a woman, I feel I don't really have a seat at the table. I don't really feel that I'm heard in discussions either with other, members of my family, my brothers, my fathers, my husband, or even the other women. Maybe there's another woman in the family who knows more than you, right? So you want to say to yourself, well, I want to have a seat at that table. I want to feel that I can talk about finances. But also maybe I actually want to be like, no, I want to control my own finances. So whatever that vision is, each one will be unique to everybody else. And I can't assume what everybody's vision needs to be. Once you identify that vision, then you have to think to yourself, what plan do I need to put into place to get myself from my existing money mindset to my future one? Yeah. And these are things like, these could be things that are pure mental shifts, right? Maybe it's just you working on yourself to be like, and neuro-linguistically planning in your head that I'm no longer going to feel that I'm in lack, but I'm going to feel of abundance. Yep. But then there are going to be some things more concrete, some plans that are more concrete. And maybe on those plans, maybe you do need to seek a professional advice or something like that. But really, in summary, is where you are today, where you want to be in the future, and how you're going to plan to get there.
Right. I think that's a great framework for anyone really to follow. I mean, if you've got an interest and if you'd like to learn more, educate yourself more, I think that's a perfect way. Although, I mean, to sort of come back to it a little, I mean, I don't know why, but there seems to be a sense that women seem to shy away from this topic, savings, investments, and many a time they don't really actively participate in these discussions. So how does that change? I mean, so
it's a very good. No, I hear and understand what you're saying, and I do think overall you're 100% right. On average, women feel less confident to talk about finances, and I think they, it's a combination of, people never explaining or teaching them it as well. So right from a young age, I mean, even in schools, to be fair, again, this is again for boys and girls in schools. When are you really taught about, I mean, maybe things are changing now, but when are you really taught about, finances? And then the women do sometimes get left behind. And again, especially from a cultural perspective, I'm of Indian origin. I was born and brought up in Kenya. Yes, I'm British. And so I've got this kind of blended mix of East and West. Yeah. But even within my Eastern side, there is still there is that feeling of, the girls will get certain information and the boys will get other information. And it's not sometimes that it's a conscious thing. It's not that it's a proactive thing. Correct. It's something that's subtle. Yeah. It's something that you can't put your finger on, and yet at the same time has a very tangible outwardly result. Yeah. So the result will always not always, but the result then tends to be is you have women who grow up who just don't feel comfortable even talking about money. They feel that they shouldn't even be talking about money. And even if they do talk about money, they get told it's okay or kind of be pushed aside.
Sure.
So I think I do feel that it's that kind of, that it's just this kind of interplay. It's no one's fault as such, but it's this kind of this cultural interplay that's been happening over the years. And then as a result, if you've always been told that you don't need to know about money or you should, this don't worry, or, you end up then going, you also then you don't have the confidence to start to explore about money. So a lot of the time, how much do women take out of their way to then read up on finances?
Exactly. Yeah.
Do they read the Financial Times? Do they educate themselves? Do they decide, okay, fine, I actually want to know what is this all about? So then it becomes that creates a behavioral effect.
Correct.
And women don't know that, they end up not even looking out for that information.
Yeah.
So then it becomes this perpetuating cycle.
So, I mean, and you're right. I mean, you break it by actually starting to participate and talk more about it.
Yes, exactly.
So I remember when I was in college, for example, riding the train, and a lot of the Midday was a popular read at that time in Bombay, and a lot of the others would be reading the Economic Times. And at one point of time, I just started saying to myself that, if I'm interested in learning more about that part, I should start reading that, and that's what I did. So the reason I'm sort of going into that is, I think the point that you've made is that taking more of an active interest in it is important.
Exactly. So where your focus goes, your energy flows.
Yeah.
Right. So I think women, if they know and you're aware, and this is where I kind of sit, is that part of that plan, that action plan, you need to also take some accountability. So it's very easy to say, okay, but as a girl child in my world and my life, I was always not told, my brothers were told, but I wasn't told. Okay, that was the past, but we are in the present now. And what can you do to change that?
Absolutely.
And what can you, so is it about then saying, okay, there's plenty of resources. You know, you these days everybody YouTubes everything about everything.
Oh, yeah.
You know, even if you want to start to get to know a little bit about it, why don't you take the time to go and research a little bit about it? The more you get confidence, the more you want to go. So the focus, that's where your energy starts flowing. And then you learn more, and then you become more empowered because knowledge is power.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I think that brings me to my next question, which is it important for women to start, saving and investing, and why? And also, what stops women from actually doing that?
It's such a good point. I mean, the best way, is every woman, because you're every human being, whether you're a man or woman, you need to think about saving and investing. You need to think about your future. Yeah. But a lot of the time, just some people say, when you say, I get this all the time. I say, I'm a wealth manager. And they're like, well, one day when I have wealth to manage, then I'll give you a call. And I'm like, the amount of times I get that. And I'm like, you have whatever wealth you have, whatever money you have, you need to manage your money.
Absolutely.
And you need to be like, and there are things that you can do. And it's more about just taking ownership. It's as simple as sometimes just listing out, what do you spend your money on? And where can I make some savings here, or do this like that? Or again, understanding where you are currently, but more importantly, first understanding where you want to be.
Correct.
So again, I liken it to maybe going to the gym. Okay, we all know that we need to keep healthy and exercise. Not everybody needs to lose weight as such, but everybody knows they need to exercise.
Yep.
You know the theory of it, but do we all put it into practice? And my worry is that sometimes even in the financial world, people don't even know the theory, let alone the practice.
Correct.
So I think as financial advisors and people within the finance sector, what we can do is we can raise awareness, and we can bring the attention to, bring it to everybody's attention. Just like, say, in the fitness industry, how much is there so much knowledge now about, making what you should eat and how you should live a healthy lifestyle. It's the same thing. We're helping people think about how to manage a healthy money mindset, right? But at the same time, the practicality still comes to you taking ownership and doing what you need to do. And I think the reason why women get stuck is almost like when you're scared of something, when you don't know what it is, and when you don't have knowledge, you shy away from it.
So a little hesitant, a little fearful.
And that can be overcome by just empowering yourself to know more about it.
Taking action.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. There are many women who don't have an independent source of income. Homemakers that come to mind. But they may have an equal amount of passion, interest to sort of be financially independent. How would you advise someone in that kind of position to sort of manage to save or to invest into her financial future?
So, again, let's take now this lady, an example of a woman who's understood that, she feels fearful talking about money. She then understands that her future perspective is to change that. So she's take some plans in place, and she's gone and educated herself about basics of finance and everything. Now the time is to have that conversation. So to sit down with your husband or your father, your brother, whoever you maybe rely on that kind of source of income from, and you sit down at that table and you say, well, I do have a value. Even though I'm not getting a salary per month, so to speak, I'm bringing a value to this family. And I think that it's about having that conversation with your other half to be like, okay, look, this is where we stand. So let's just even talk. And the reason why it's important at a very basic level to understand the value that a woman who doesn't necessarily work in traditional roles, but works at the home looking after the children and the family, is that from a life insurance perspective, right?
Yep.
So, tomorrow we always have this conversation is if the man isn't around and that income has been provided, yes, it's an obvious one because it's a very tangible result.
Yeah.
But when a woman who's been looking after the family is no longer around, well, that family will have to maybe, hire like, a very high-end governess or tutor, like maybe sort of a more, have extra, maybe a driver that you would need to think. So multiple.
Really,
So that one lady that woman is actually doing multiple people's jobs.
Yeah.
And so you then almost need to think about what would be that cost of hiring those multiple jobs to replace that one person.
Correct.
So that's just on the life insurance aspect.
Correct.
But then that feeds into having the conversation around, okay, well, just because, there's an opportunity cost of me looking after the family,
Yep.
Especially most people these days are all educated. I could be working. So what is that? So there's an income replacement here.
So you assign a value.
Exactly. You assign a value and then you sit down and you say, again, financial planning with husband and wife, because you're both contributing to the home, needs to be like, where do we want to now be in the future, right? And also then saying, okay, well, this is how this needs to look like, and then putting that plan in place. But also having that conversation of saying, should we have accounts that are for our joint savings?
Correct.
Then should we have account for, joint spending?
Yep.
But you also may want to have individual spending and individual saving.
Correct.
And, it's just being able to chart that out, because you don't also want to, for husband and wife,
Yep.
you don't want to always see what the other is spending. Maybe they want to buy you a gift and it becomes a bit less, nice, that like it's obvious what it's coming out of. So you need some element of surprise, but you also need some element of independence, right? So whether I want to be able to choose to spend what I want to spend on, but within my budget that I've been given, or if I want to have a bit of savings that I want to save, and then on that, then I can also go to and go and meet a financial advisor and say to myself, whatever it is, and use that as a tool to maybe get yourself more financially literate.
Yep.
But I do think that it's really important that you have that conversation, that you have strength and ownership, that you are bringing value to the table, and that you have every right to be able to say, look, how are we structuring our current finances so that we're able to then build on for our goals? So it's a bit like, what are our joint goals and how are we going to get there together? And I think once you've got a sense of empowerment, you're able to do that. When a woman does that, especially when a mother does that, it sets a very strong precedent then, and a good value base for the children to observe it. So even if you only have sons, they'll be watching that, and then when they grow up and they have their wives, then that perpetuates it. So it does become, it doesn't seem like it, I think, sometimes, but it has a bit of a wider paradigm shift that is happening by being able to have that seat at the table.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And sometimes I think it may scare people having that conversation. It may seem like a big mountain to climb, but no other way but to get started and try.
Exactly. And I also agree, like you wouldn't go, again, if you're fearful, you wouldn't go and talk, if somebody knows a lot more than somebody, for example, you feel a bit intimidated. Like, if you're like, oh, I want to talk about, but they know so much, or they feel like the husband knows so much about it and I don't know anything. And so then there's that fearfulness of, but get to that point first.
Correct.
Nobody's saying go and run and have a conversation right now and say, okay, we need to do it like this.
Yeah.
Empower yourself a little bit more, understand what you want, and then be able to then even plan it out. And this is where it's great. Go and speak to a financial advisor even. Go and speak to somebody, a consultant or a money coach who can help you identify also how you want to change things. So, you do have the power. You just have to find the time and the energy to do it.
Absolutely agree. What age would you advise someone starts having these conversations, starts investing, and do we even look at it right now in today's day and age with regard to gender or relationships status as a factor that affects investing?
Well, I mean, my general advice, and I know your general advice to everybody, is just get in early. And if you think, oh, I missed the boat and I should have done it a year ago, 10 years ago, well, today is the best day, right?
Absolutely.
It's just to start straight away, start early, save what you can, understand where you want to be. And, you know, and also, and don't always think that exactly just that because you don't have an income, it doesn't mean that you can't go and find, you know, as I said, once you've gone and put that thing is you can get an income.
Yep.
You know, you can get an income from your family pot, and that's what you need to redefine.
Yep.
But also, you know, you need to think to yourself like from, you know, okay, today is the day that I need to say, what is my future? And then along the way, you need to think about planning for these kind of events, right? So men will have different events in their lives, but so will women.
Correct. Yeah, and you know that sort of brings me to my next question, which is, women will have different needs from men, and not just from a physical perspective, but also from the way that careers tend to sort of pan out. Women tend to take more breaks, etc. Whether it is family care, elder care, tend to have traditionally fallen more on the shoulders of women. I'm not saying that is right, but how do you see that? I mean, women's needs being different from men, how does that impact the financial part of things?
There's a big part of me will say, well, why is only for women and all of that? And there'll be listeners out there who will be like, well, that's all very traditional.
Yep.
And, you know, as we addressed on earlier, is that, you know, for somebody like me who's, again, a blended East of West, is I have to honor that aspect of that Eastern culture that is within that.
Sure.
But what I would say is that, so women will take breaks at different points in their lives for different reasons than men will do. However, what I would say is the fundamentals remain the same when you look at your planning.
Correct.
So when you sit down with a financial advisor, you know, what you should be doing is saying, okay, you're here, we want to be here. These are the life events that are going to come up. Yeah. So what are the plans for both of you, right?
Correct.
So the woman will maybe, you know, get like these kind of life events. These life events are always what then triggers, you know, maybe a different, you know, planning perspective from a financial perspective. But also women and men within that space will have maybe different points where you've kind of got to balance that out.
Sure.
So you've got to plan for that, right?
Yeah.
So all it just becomes is another thing to plan within that space.
Correct.
And what I would encourage, I would say, is that, you know, for example, like if it's part of the plan, because it's not always the plan for every woman, but if it's part of the plan for women to take a break if they have children, you know, maybe you've gone from a really buzzing career, then you go and you have children and that career gets put on the sideline.
Yep.
And then that carries on for many years. And then the women, like later on when the children get, you know, older, they then, you know, they've been out of the career for a long time. They want to know how to get back into that thing. But then they feel that their resources have been depleted or their knowledge has gone down and the industry has gone down. What I would advise is that just like when you're planning with everything, whether it's planning for marriage, children, buying your first house, second house, the yacht, whatever the plans are, and then retirement and education for your children, when you're doing those planning, you also plan your breaks as well. So within that time, you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to take time off to have children and I want to honor that and be authentic to that. But I also want to think that over my time of me doing that, I want to have a focus. And maybe I will use that time to always maybe shift my career focus. So like, for example, finance for me turned into artist. Or maybe I always want to be conscious of the fact that maybe I do a course on my career that I want to keep going forward and I keep my skills up even during that. It doesn't need to be, you know, like 9 to 5 every day because you'll be looking after the family, but just being mindful of maybe pulling in your skill sets so that you have a plan to return later to the workforce. So everything is possible. You just can't, you shouldn't just get, I would say, rolled up into what is the status quo. if you're mindful of what you want, you have a vision of the future, everything you can plan for, which then makes you feel strong, empowered, and you know the direction in which you're going for.
Sure, that is fantastic. I mean, I love the fact that you can actually take that time and that break to find and follow and invest in, in your passion, in something that you may be passionate about, and to sort of make that a part of your career going forward. That's fantastic.
And I mean, it works in both ways. I mean, maybe, the woman, the wife or the partner in that relationship, she might take time off to have children, but then maybe you've put it in your plan with your other half that maybe he might then want to switch from his corporate career or what he's doing to something more entrepreneurial where you are then able to support him.
Absolutely.
And then the minute it starts to it becomes a joint conversation.
Exactly.
That's when the dynamics change.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, because also if you look at it from a man's perspective, like, a lot of the time, do they want to take breaks? Do they also want to maybe understand where their passion lies and how does that affect without, disrupting the family environment? So it's the importance of that everybody understands where you want to go, what your goals, dreams, and ambitions are, and then be able to plan accordingly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that open conversation between both partners is so essential to be able to, it is a joint responsibility. So,
and I think it's important that we also address as well the people who are single or single women within the environment. That it's not necessarily about having that, that other partner to lean on.
Sure.
And I think also sometimes is that's not, you don't need to wait for that.
Correct.
Either.
Yeah.
So this expectation that, when I get married or when I find a partner, then that will lead to this. Again, it's like, you, for your own self, for your own knowledge, is you need to understand what is it you want.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like you taking ownership, because it's not like, and that's what I'm saying, whether you're in a relationship or whether you're single.
Correct.
That level of empowerment and knowledge, increasing your knowledge, needs to start with you. And yes, then there's so many ways of which you can do that. So you can go and seek professional advice, speak to a financial advisor, go online, join groups, join focus groups. I mean, the options are literally endless.
Absolutely.
But if you don't make a conscious decision to seek out that information, you will always remain in your current state.
Agreed. And how do you look at the solutions that are currently available? I mean, today we've got a variety of products that are available in the marketplaces all over. Do these meet the needs of women, or how do you see those solutions available?
Yeah,
today?
I mean, the way I see it is on that front, I'm gender agnostic to that. I'm gender agnostic to the products and solutions available, because when you strip it down, and that's the whole point, is that you strip it down. We're all human beings. We all need to plan for our future. And, once you have your plan in place, you just need to seek the best advice and follow the path that resonates best with you, but also that, that matches your suitability, affordability, your plan, and then you need to be able to execute that. And it comes down to whether a man or woman is finding that right advice that comes from it, and not being shy to go and ask for the right advice.
Correct. So I hear you. There are enough and more solutions out there that suit the needs of everyone, I think.
Yeah.
So that's
exactly
brilliant.
Like whatever it is you need. You can
structure it.
You can go and get it these days.
Yeah. So that brings me to the last question that is there for this episode. What is your message to the women of today?
Oh, the message. There's lots of them, but what I would say is, it first starts with you. You need to connect to yourself, and you need to be honest with yourself about where you stand today. And if you really do want to change things, it's not about just feeling empowered by like for example, this talk or maybe one seminar you listen to, it's then also about taking tangible actions to get there.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Amrita. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for your message. Would you like to give our audience a sense of where they can reach out to you, find you, follow you?
Yes, absolutely. You can follow me on LinkedIn under Amrita Sethi, and I've got an Instagram of wealth.by.amrita. For those of you who know, I'm also an artist. You can follow me at artbyamrita.com or on Instagram at art.by.amrita.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.
No, thank you so much, and you have a lovely day as well.